Welcome to Defender Friday. So it's a little bit of a different one this week. So usually we kind of get somebody from the outside that is just working on something interesting that we haven't heard about, and we kind of bring in a discussion. So this week, I think it's spiritually kind of very similar, but we wanted to go and essentially show some of the AI stuff that like we've been working on, and just get some discussion with what other folks have been working on. So, I think there's like a thing that's kind of like missing pretty often is really like people bringing in like working things that they've put forward instead of just like talking about it. So we've got a bunch of people that have experimented in a bunch of different ways with AI. If you have as well, please do jump in and share what you've got. Obviously, AI and cybersecurity, like specific, is kind of the focus here. Yeah, that was just kind of like the idea. Am I missing anything, Chris?
No, that sounds pretty good. I'd be curious to know if anybody on the calls played with what we launched on Tuesday yet.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's just show some of that stuff. Do you have something ready on your side?
No, I can tee something up though. It's pretty easy to go. I might have to jump over to a different machine here.
Yeah, same here. I got a little bit rushed this morning. I know I wanted to talk a little bit about reverse engineering and AI. And so I guess maybe that's kind of a good priming question. Has anybody done reverse engineering things with AI so far? Like I've seen like I see there's a lot of like investigation, like querying, not data lakes kind of thing. But I started playing with the RE side. Anything? No. All right. Well, I'm gonna show something that hopefully is kind of cool. Oh, I see. There are any Ghidra use skills already out there? Well, this is, so somebody in chat dash talking about Ghidra. This is a great segue into. I can't present. I don't know how any of this works. How do I present? Okay, there's a second me, promote to panelist. Yes, okay. All righty. So I'm host disabled attendee screen sharing. Oh man.
Hey, Max.
Yes.
At the bottom of your Zoom window, there should be a little share screen button in a green circle, like right in the middle of the Zoom window. Do you not see that?
There is. It's just I'm on a different machine. How do you
complicated
enable
Chromebook setup?
It's really not complicated, is the thing. It's just a different instance. Make host. All right, I'm gonna make myself host and just YOLO.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. Cool. The window. All righty. So I think, yeah, I'm sharing for everybody, right? Sweet.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting thing. It's going to get to the AI really quickly. But somebody mentioned Ghidra. I've never actually used Ghidra myself. I'm from the old days of IDA Pro. But conceptually, I understand it's very kind of similar. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to start playing with being able to do some reverse engineering from AI, like from Cloud Code, right? For me, it's all Cloud Code. And I didn't know about any skills written by anybody for Ghidra. So what I did is I essentially told Claude Code to go and install Ghidra, look at all the documentation for Ghidra, extract from that the core capabilities, and particularly for running headless, right? Running via CLI tool, because Claude Code is not going to do well with like a UI, but as soon as it's a CLI, it works great. And so I did all that. And then after I said, okay, I don't want you to do this every time. So create for me a new CLI tool that kind of wraps this, and then also a bunch of other utilities, like, running file, doing some hex dump stuff, like a bunch of basic things, and then create a CLI that just wraps them, fronts those, and then has a description of the usage for it. And so I did all that, did like a couple of passes through. Honestly, I did not even try to use the CLI myself because I'm not the customer for the CLI, right? The AI is. But after a couple of instances, I got it to kind of have all these types of capabilities. A bunch of those are like, Yara, okay, whatever, imhash. So it's not really Ghidra, but then it gets into the Ghidra specific, where you can see some of the fast analysis, like just get IOCs, get the strings, blah, blah, blah. And then Ghidra command. So query functions, and then the binary, and then it caches it behind the scenes. So the first time takes more time, but then it's cached. And so you can tell it like, hey, list me all the functions that are within find domain. And then from there, you can use like the cross references. So essentially, it will decompile a bunch of the code. And think of it like you take the raw binary, it decompiles it into C roughly, but it's C that you often don't get like the variable names because it's lost during compilation. But the AI, what I found is the AI doesn't really care all that much, because for it's just so used to looking at code that it's like the relationships between things and the pattern that it understands best. And so it's able to do that decompilation, understand function by function, and then you can tell it like, it has the ability to see, okay, what function is it this call? Where's it coming from? Kind of like traverse the tree of all of this, and then just like come up with its own conclusion. So I just wanted this to be like the mechanical part of that. And then I threw it against an actual sample, and I have like the analysis here. So this is like a typical analysis that it generated. I think this was WannaCry, I want to say. I kind of like anonymized it a little bit. But it's really cool because it started extracting all the things you would expect, like the sections of the binary, all that, ran all of the different, like looking for IOCs, so looking for like domains and all that. So yeah, this was clearly WannaCry, string analysis, and then comprehensive report. There we go. And then it gets into the decompilation. So it'll generate stuff like this. So you can see like the API calls into Windows. So you see kind of what it's doing at the operating system level, but the variables are super opaque. But even from there, you can see that it's able to like actually describe what's happening, I think, before. So the reasoning like, oh yeah, this is like self-copying, dropper behavior, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I mean, somebody's saying like Greg about like associating with a threat actor. I suspect, like what I found is if it's got the data if it's super well known, it'll work well. If it's got data for a problem, usually it won't hallucinate. If you ask it a question and it doesn't have the data, that's where it's going to like hallucinate a lot more frequently. So I don't know. I would not rely on threat attribution from Claude Code. I'll put it that way. Although, if you had also threat intel that you buy from somebody, and hopefully at this stage, they have an MCP server or a RAG search over their threat intel or something like that, then like that's kind of the beauty of Claude Code. You could start to just go like drop in your MCP server and now just say like, when you're done, compare your findings into the threat intel that I've got and see if you can get some attribution going, which I think would be like super cool. So anyway, that's open source LCRE because I have no imagination. And then it's also now rolled into our own solution. If you use the web-based Claude Code that's built into our web app, that is now hooked in the container by default. So you can just say use LCRE to grab this binary and check these things and blah 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 blah. But yeah, this was like vibe coded in a couple hours. So I'm super curious to see how it works for people. I think it's going to be a lot easier to get like 0 to 80% just based on like the CLI versus writing a ton of skills to use Ghidra. I don't know. I might be wrong though. Anyway, that's kind of my thing recently. Anybody else want to share anything?
Yeah, I can try and take over here. Let's see.
I will try to share.
Yeah, so I guess first of all, you guys, yeah, I'm screen sharing. Great. I don't know if you guys were at the event that we had earlier this week. I don't think we brought it up specifically on this call, but essentially we built a set of skills for Claude Code that interact with LimaCharlie in a lot of really cool and interesting ways. So I'll post the repo, what I'm showing here. It is available in the web app, so you can authenticate through the UI and stuff. But for this, I'm just going to show what I've done on the console. So here's the repo. You can read about like the details. But like I said, essentially we built a bunch of skills that help guide Claude Code to use LimaCharlie effectively. So utilizing subagents, utilizing deterministic scripts where it makes sense to make sure it's not hallucinating and stuff like that. And it's really good at a lot of specific things. I think in general, it's just like we're still figuring out how capable it is. But one of the things that I found it really good at was rule tuning. So we have like this LC demo instance that's like super noisy because everybody just goes there and like, makes a mess and like, so rules fire all the time. And I just wanted to test it out for rule tuning. And I've got a bit of a bullet time thing here to speed it up, but I asked it to look at like the 3 noisiest rules on my tenant and then investigate them, determine if they were benign. And if they were benign, then write a false positive rule for me, test them and deploy them. And you want to go confirm everything that this will do, but like it was working as expected. And I imagine this would have taken a lot longer than a couple minutes in real life. So we'll just watch it here. It speeds up a little. It's doing its thing. And yeah, there we go. So you can see it's giving a bit of a report here. So there's a rule that was firing from the macOS system processes, created a false positive rule. Windows Defender setting was changed. So we had a rule on that was firing, creating 144 over the last 7 days. And then it also noticed that there was a rule firing, which I think is a system one where the sensor is being enrolled. And it could recognize that that was like a valid thing that was happening. And so it didn't create a false positive rule. So yeah, I continually get amazed at how capable this thing is. And every time I think of new things to try, it's able to do it. I was able to install AWS as a data source ingested into LimaCharlie because it recognized a CLI on my machine, automatically hooked it up, confirmed that the data was coming in. You can get it to write detection rules from threat reports. Again, all stuff you want to like check as a human after the fact, but incredibly capable and big time save. I don't know, Max, what's the thing that's blown you away the most since we've put this together?
That's a good question. I think just how good it is at the general purpose. I feel like it's at a better stage now than anything purpose built for it for like security. Like it's just able to adapt to everything that you throw at it. Like non-security stuff, but I've been doing a lot of investigation into our infrastructure, like around what's happening, and it's able, if you give it the tools. So I think that's the big key for me. You give it the tools, and it's able to like go and do the things that you want it to do. Whereas it used to be like 6 months ago, it was like, no, you had to build a workflow for it, right? Which is like, you're going to do this and then this and then this, and like, don't deviate, don't do anything else. And now it's just really good in general. So I think that's the kind of the big thing. And you get desensitized, the other thing, right? Like, like you get like, you do this for like a month, and then you're like, oh, of course it can go and plug in like AWS from your AWS CLI locally. Like, duh, well, of course.
Ken, I'm curious what your experience has been like, because I know you're maybe a little more skeptical, and you got to play with it quite a bit this week. So I'm just curious what your impressions were.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little, I think a lot of security practitioners were a little reticent when it comes to some of the new technologies. I'm not necessarily a Luddite, but I was a little nervous. I don't know if you've ever read the book Damon by Daniel Suarez. It's sort of about a rogue AI. Like, that's kind of how I kind of pictured it, where it goes out and murders people and things like that. Luckily, over the last week, when I've been doing some more experiments, I haven't killed anybody yet, so that's good. But I started with with running reports. I think that was where it was really helpful. Like, again, doing analyzing even the logic in my detections, and what does my MITRE attack coverage look like, and then even make recommendations about additional rules that I would want in there. I think that was great. And then now you can even ask it to write the rules too, and that's where I was a little nervous. Like, I it's fine for me running reports and things like that, but then getting these AI bots to go out and actually do some of this work for me, that's where I was a little nervous. But setting up the EC2 instances like in AWS and giving it command line access, I think that was okay in the sandbox. I'm still a little nervous about doing that like in a production environment. I would probably when I have it ask do smaller tasks and things like that and ask me along the way. But man, it's just incredibly powerful. I mean, it was doing things like that I don't even understand how it does it. Like, I couldn't do it myself, like some of the playbooks and things like that. It would take me days, and it's doing it like within 20 minutes. It's just kind of crazy how rapidly this technology is evolving. And especially with the skills that you built, Christopher, that you put in there, that you really kind of keeps it on the kind of a little bit more on the guardrails. I think that's kind of helpful, directing it, where the information is, teaching it about the API as well. I think that was really important. So it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm curious how other people are going to be, bringing this into their environments. Do they trust the AI yet? Like, at what point are we going to allow it to do this sort of work?
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, I had like a real world thing a couple of days ago. So Emmerich and I were talking internally, and we're doing some disaster recovery stuff, which involves like reading a bunch of repos and all that. And then as we were talking, we got thinking like, hey, like one thing we have a lack of is like these types of like UEBAs, insider threat type of thing, and like we don't have as much like detection coverage for that. And so I was thinking like, all right, let's give it a shot, right? So like use the AI against our own like internal tenant, and the key there was, look, we're kind of a weird organization in that like we're really a lot in the cloud. There's a bunch of things we don't have, some things we have. And so I was really reluctant. I was skeptical to see what it would come up with. But that was kind of the cool part for me, is it went through our data first, right? I was just like, help me get better coverage around that. And it looked at the data that we had, what we had connected, and then looked at like sample events and like, really did its work, and then came back out and was like, all right, here's like 5 things that I think would be like beneficial. It's like some GitHub stuff, there's some Slack stuff, and it just like puts it all together. And it's like, do you want to test them historically just to see how it went, right? And so it's really changed that relationship to rules for me, where I feel like there's something that's changing, like from the days of like, like I had a rule and it was like super heavily crafted and like it was like Sigma so that it can be portable. And I feel like it's kind of like diluting that, because now it's like it doesn't have to be this like magical like single rule. Maybe I'm just able to like, take a weird like elastic rule and convert it to something else when I need it, and like that works fine. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. Go for it, Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to show one more because I know there's like somebody made the comment about getting AI to manage the AWS server in production, and I totally get like there's some anxiety around those kind of mission critical things, but like operationally, there's also like a ton of time saving stuff I find it's really good at. So this is another one of my little demo videos that I did where I ask it to create me a new tenant, give it a name, apply all the Sigma community rules, and then set up Git sync, which is how we sync our infrastructure as code with a GitHub repository so people can manage things. And again, it's not hard, but like doing all of that manually, probably hour and a half at least kind of thing to get everything set up. And, it does it in a couple minutes here. So I feel like, even if we're going to keep the guardrails up for touching things that could break production deployments and stuff, there's still a lot of operational stuff that it's incredibly helpful with.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to get other people's take, but what I found is, as long as, so like the permission system is really, really good. Meaning like, look, is it a pain in the ass to click like yes, approve? Like totally. But the flip side of that is it's not going to go nuke a thing, right? It's going to ask you for permission before. So like, I feel like it's a pretty good balance. But the main thing I found is, if your interpretation of what it's good and like what it can do is like a year old, this is like 9 months too late. Like it's just changed. Like it's gotten so much more reliable. It's really day and night. And so like, yeah, you don't want to like get it to like, manage like all of prod YOLO for sure. But I found that it is much better at understanding the CLI tools than I am, right? Like I could spend an hour like finding the exact right syntax for this tool, or I can get it to look at it and suggest something, and then I can eyeball it and just go like, yeah, that makes sense, go, yeah. Right? And it's
even
really
like helping you set up a new data source. Like I found that super useful. Like I'd never used Sumo Logic before, and I hooked it up as a data source the other day, and like, it did the part on LimaCharlie that it could do automatically, but it also told me what to do in Sumo Logic, so I didn't even have to look at their documentation to like get through the process. So I found that another one of those things that in the real world is going to save a lot of time, and we're not going YOLO on AWS.
Yeah. Other people's docs. That's been a big deal. So anybody else? I'm really curious to hear about like other people like that have used, not just like LimaCharlie, right? But like just across the board, like good or bad experiences, maybe with like, I saw somebody was mentioning some other like binary tool, like Ninja something earlier, like Binary Ninja, which rings a bell, but I don't really recall exactly what that is. Any cool things?
Well, somebody shared the article about, I think Gemini wiping somebody's hard drive or something.
Oh, yeah. Well, so yeah, that's the other thing, right? Like everything I'm talking about is based on Claude Code at this point. I've banged my head against the wall enough with other unnamed models that these kind of do tool calls, except like, I don't know, 5 out of 100 times, like they'll just totally wipe out during the tool call, and then it's just frustrating. But like, I haven't had that issue with Claude, not so far anyway. So there's other stuff that I was going to share that I can share.
I do wonder, like, obviously it's like helping certain things go faster and, you know, getting us data summaries and doing all this stuff that's useful. I do wonder if there's a point in the future where it becomes trustworthy enough that people are using it for stuff that humans are doing right now.
Isn't it already doing that?
Well, yeah, I mean, like responding in like, you know, blocking access and in sort of taking more of stuff that we're currently getting humans in the loop for and not trusting it to do. Yeah.
Like higher stakes stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would definitely not like, to be clear, do not do that today. I think it's a bad idea. For sure. Yeah, but here's another. Here's another use case that I really like personally. It's been the reporting. I know that like reporting is like bread and butter to every chatbot out there. But it's still good. I think the idea of having completely customized reporting is the bit that I really like. I want reporting really specifically about like output usage. In our case, it's like forwarding data somewhere else and like how much it's costing me and just being able to exactly get like a snapshot and like the graphs and everything is pretty cool when you compare that to like, well, I'm going to go into like the reporting section of the web app in my tool, and then I'm going to figure out how create report works. And then I'm going to figure out what can't do. And like, oh, they don't support that one dimension. Like, oh, well, and this is just like, just go, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So that's a super interesting other thing, right? Was it Kevin? I think about some subset of users are going to go and like YOLO it, and that's actually a thing that we kind of had to ask ourselves a question and got some really good feedback from. He's not here, but like shout out to Eric Capuano about how we allow users to do it. Like our initial take was essentially, look, if the user has the permissions to do X, we should allow like an AI to do X, but like when it's directed by the user. But then, to your point, like there's a bunch of like junior people that might do stupid things where like you want to give them the permission, but you're like, if they just YOLO it, it's not a good thing. So what we ended up doing was essentially that you have a permission like in each tenant that allows you to give that permission to a user. And that is what allows that user to use our MCP server with that tenant. So it's kind of like weirdly redundant because it's not just, do you have the permission, but it's like, do you have the permission using AI? And I think it's kind of a good balance, but it's interesting that it's not a security boundary, right? Because that is using our MCP server. There's nothing that stops like a user from like vibe coding their own MCP server locally, and then like there's no control because it's just going over the API like everything else. So I don't know. I don't know how that's like what the lessons learned in a year are going to be around that. Yeah, and a lot of new things. That's the exciting part, right? Like so many like new approaches are emerging. It's look, I pretty firmly believe that like there's so much potential here to do different things, and now is the time that we all get to do what the security community does best, honestly, which is just like trying weird stuff. So yeah, super excited to see where it goes. I think we're like pretty much at the end of the time here. thanks for sticking around. Hopefully that was interesting. If you want to chat further, always happy to talk with folks about that stuff. I know most of us are here. And yeah, we'll see you next week, the other Defender Fridays.